So I was absolutely thrilled at the new Nintendo Direct. Out and bought the remix that was happening and the adaptation that Square Enix was working on for Final Fantasy Brave Exodus. In fact, I was so excited about the whole thing that I day zeroed. As in, basically, I pre-ordered Final Fantasy Resonance on the very day it was announced. It hadn't even been 16 hours since it had been announced and I'd already pre-ordered. You know, so that was pretty big and everything. And you know, the the primary thing that happened at today's Nintendo Switch that made me really excited about, Nintendo Direct, it felt finally like, Nintendo had corrected what had been, you know, the historical mistake, everything. It's been a really wild ride. It's been an exciting times. For those of us that are fans of turn-based games, we seem to be in the golden age of turn-based art. Switch. Anyways, Steam as well, as I'm coming to learn, is great. It's great for us turn-based fans that have learned homely and everything, and everything. Because I was so much of a console exclusive person and everything that, I just hadn't done enough of a depth of exploration on Steam and just that split in so many different directions that gaming wasn't the only type of thing that I like to do hobby wise. I like to read books. I like to watch really good television shows, not TV broadly speaking. I am pretty exclusive to what I consider great TV, like Person of Interest for instance. For example, as a television show, um I like good movies. I used to hate Pleasantville as a movie when I was a child because I didn't get it. But as I got older and older and older and older, I came to love Pleasantville because I understood the point that it was trying to make and the allegory it was trying to make as I got older and older and older. And then once I began to really rethink it, I came to really deeply appreciate Pleasantville. Child me didn't connect the dots. Adult me is like, oh, holy shit, that's what they were talking about. That makes so much sense. I love it. Yeah, and everything. And so, I'm a fan, I guess you could say, of good art, good storytelling and everything, which is no wonder I've become a fan of turn-based RPGs. I mean, so many of us, so many of us, were fans of the fact of the lore that was being told in turn-based RPGs, and that's one of the primary draws of the whole thing. I'm a multimedia fan. I read books. Square Enix with our family has attracted a crowd of literary nerds that love to go to the library and check out books. Like we're crossing the divide into the video game world and showing respects to it and admitting that it can tell compelling stories, being drawn to it because otherwise we'd just be reading books where we are literally part of the literary community. So, the fact that we, are playing these games is, very much so a nod of respect to them and everything from the literary crowd and everything. And so, you know, when it comes to a justification for why I haven't, really delved into the Steam library and stuff, I do play a few console RPGs here and there. I've even played a few Steam RPGs, but I haven't done a depth exploration of the RPGs because I'm inundated. My backlog has grown so extremely long that I just haven't found the time to depth explore, Steam-based RPGs. Although I know it's there and everything, and I know that it's something that I'm interested in exploring. And when I'm like, I guess, done with the stuff that I've decided to do over the last few years and everything, like, get through, you know, uh, Deep Space Nine and finish catching up in Valdemar in '86 and all this other stuff and everything. The '86 light novels, and I'm a big fan of them. So there you go. There's just too much stuff to do, not enough hours in the day, sort of thing that's going on with respect to my not having really depth explored, Steam RPGs. So, anyways, but I know they're there and everything, and I really want to get a Steam Deck, to create pressure for me to, do some more exploration of, that underworld and everything, because it's, a lot of these RPG gamers, that grew up playing these games are now game developers themselves that have grown up and become RPG makers themselves and crossed over that divide, and now they're making Steam RPGs for as love stories to the games that they grew up and fell in love with, and it's it's really great and everything. Seeing that this is happening, it's a love fest and everything. So when I looked at the Nintendo Direct, the primary thing that I felt was seen, and respected, and everything, because we got like what, three launches this time. We got Fire Emblem. We got an announcement for a new Xenoblade game, which I don't know if it's going to be, but the battle system is going to work in a turn-based way, but we don't know this information yet and everything. I think three was pretty famously an ARPG, but that happened after they'd already made us a fan of the Xenoblade franchise, so we definitely will watch somebody play. Anyways, so well, as you know, per my own revealed preferences, I'm a fan of turn-based RPGs. We feel like under siege, and so we've built a media ecosystem for ourselves and everything. So if you want to know the truth about me, like I said, well, I haven't come on here and said it, for example, yet, but when it comes to, my gaming that I have done historically, and the video game that I like to play occasionally, although I really don't consider myself a gamer, and everything, even though I do enjoy a good video game every now and then and everything, like, but being a gamer is not really part of my identity in such a way where, yeah. Anyways, so, more book nerd than gamer. So, when when I uh play a video game, it's within this genre. So the thing is that what you really should know about us is that we will follow a gaming studio as a family that we enjoy into the depths of hell. The thing is that for us, the Sega CD was such a must-have that I remember as a family, going through such massive hassles and everything just to find a working unit of the Sega CD and everything, and then getting it up and running and adapters that we had to find in order once TVs changed to adapt the signal that was coming from the damn thing to the new HDMI systems that have become so normalized and everything, and run it through those systems. Just to get it running on a modern television system was a huge pain in the ass, to do and everything. But we would go through ordeals like that you know, to just to play on the Sega CD because we were such massive fans of the Lunar franchise and everything. And that just goes to show you that we will follow a gaming studio that we like into the depths of hell. The thing of the matter is that the Sega CD was a commercial flop. It was a complete failure, and the gaming library that's on it is frankly underwhelming. There just aren't a lot of games available for it, but the two things that it did have was Lunar 1 and 2, and unfortunately, Working Designs had a failed uh, business tactics. They followed Sega onto the Saturn. They had wed themselves so much to the Sega ecosystem that, it just like the Saturn as well was a commercial flop and everything. And then, it was really stunning that, they even launched the Dreamcast and there were RPGs available for it too, and everything. In reality, the Nintendo Genesis was absolutely an RPG lover's, like there were a lot of them that were available on the Sega Genesis. Let me just put it that way and everything. That we loved it for that reason. But we loved the Nintendo. So we were as a family unit, we were not like the modern era has given rise to these fanboys of one system or another, but we were not like that. What we had in our household was both the Nintendo's Super Entertainment System and a Sega Genesis and the Sega CD. Because we wanted broad platform coverage. We wanted to be able to play an RPG no matter what system it launched or back in the day, and to some extent we are still that way. We are still of that type of thing, gamer. And so, there's plenty of room for any company. And, these days, the two systems that feel like the most compelling to us are really not, the PlayStation or the Xbox or anything. It's the Nintendo Switch and the Steam Deck, and Steam, you know, that appeals to us. So, in reaction to the Nintendo Direct, I literally day one pre-ordered Final Fantasy Resonance, and everything. Especially because, the way that it was marketed by them, they were like, Final Fantasy is going back to its roots and, it's finally going HD 2D and is turn-based and all this other stuff. And all this information was dropped about Brave Exodus, and it's like, take my money, Square Enix and everything. So, I mean, if I was looking for the next big thing from this Nintendo Direct, I probably would be rather overwhelmed. But what happened here was games. Games, 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 games. And, that's the thing and everything. The Nintendo Switch and Switch 2 have games. Sony and Xbox don't.